Okay, picture this. A man dies. He leaves behind a wine collection worth more than most countries' GDP. And instead of just handing it to his son like a normal rich dead guy, he turns the inheritance into a competition. A blind tasting death match. 12 mystery wines. One winner takes it all. If this was any other anime, someone would transform into a dragon by episode 3. Instead, people just describe wine so beautifully it makes grown men cry. And somehow that's more intense than half the shonen fights you've seen this year. Welcome back to Anime's Update, because today we are cracking open Cour 2 of The Drops of God. And trust me, this bottle's been aging perfectly. So here's the setup for anyone just walking into this vineyard. Shizuku Kanzaki is the estranged son of a legendary wine critic. Estranged meaning dad basically ghosted him for a beer career. Literally, the son works at a beer company out of spite. And when daddy dies, instead of the fortune just going to his only blood relative, the will says, prove it. Identify 12 legendary wines nicknamed the 12 Apostles and go head-to-head with his father's prodigy student, Issei Tomine, who has spent his entire life being groomed for exactly this moment. It's underdog versus prodigy. It's I never wanted this life versus I've trained for nothing else. It's Naruto versus Sasuke, but instead of chidori, it's Chardonnay. And look, I know what some of you are thinking. A whole anime about wine? Yes. And it works. Because here's the trick this show pulls off. You, the viewer, can't taste or smell anything through a screen. So instead of just going notes of oak, the anime turns every sip into a full-blown fantasy sequence. Someone tastes a wine and suddenly we're flying through a childhood memory, or standing in a thunderstorm, or watching flower petals fall in slow motion set to orchestral music. It's less wine review, and more this glass of Burgundy just gave me a religious experience. And somehow it earns it. Now quick pit stop before we go further into the vineyard. If you're new here, hit subscribe and smash that notification bell, because Anime's Update drops fresh anime breakdowns constantly, and you do not want to miss the next pour. Okay, glass refilled. Let's keep going. Let's rewind the clock for a second, because the origin story of this manga is wild on its own. This isn't some fresh-off-the-presses source material. The Drops of God manga first hit shelves back in 2004, written under the pen name Tadashi Aji, which is secretly a sibling duo and illustrated by Shu Okimoto. It ran for a full decade before wrapping up in 2014. That's 10 years of wine lore. 44 volumes. This thing has been fermenting in the cultural cellar for over 20 years before finally getting its full anime adaptation, and if you're wondering why now, honestly? Perfect timing. Prestige slow content cooking anime, tea ceremony anime. Now wine anime is having a full moment right now. The internet is exhausted by fast content and low-key craving something that makes them feel classy for 30 minutes. This show is that in a bottle. And can we talk about the animation for a second? Because critics have been split on this and honestly fair. The character art stays extremely faithful to the manga, which longtime fans are loving. It's got that unmistakable early 2000s charm baked right into the character designs, even though it just came out this year. But then, and this is where people are raising an eyebrow, the show leans on some pretty heavy 3D CGI whenever wine is actually being poured. Liquid is notoriously one of the hardest things to animate. Getting the weight, the shimmer, the way it clings to a glass traditional 2D can fake it. But this show goes full hyperrealistic CGI for it. And the clash between flat 2D character faces and glossy 3D liquid can feel a little like watching two different shows glued together. It's a bold swing. Not every viewer's cup of glass of wine. But love it or side-eye it. You cannot say this show plays it safe visually. Alright, poor settling. Let's talk about who's actually bringing this thing to life, because the voice cast is stacked. Shizuku is voiced by Kazuya Kominashi, his rival prodigy Issei Tomine by Takuya Sato, and Miyabi the sommelier in training, basically dragging Shizuku through his own wine education, is voiced by Maya Uchida. Behind the camera, director Kenji Itoso is steering the ship, with Yumitsuru handling series composition and scripts, and Sodai Suwa on character design. It's produced by Satelight, working alongside Yanchester, so this isn't some scrappy indie passion project. This is a full-scale production putting real muscle behind a story about smelling grapes correctly. Which honestly respect. Now here's where it gets spicy, and this is the actual news you clicked for. Cour 2 just got its key art and trailer, and Cour 2 means new stakes, new tension, and plot twist an entirely new soundtrack identity. Cour 1 gave us Hate You? Love You? By Hokuto as the opening and Kami no Shizuku, performed by Maya Uchida as the ending moody, emotional, very watching someone discover themselves through fermented grape juice energy. But Cour 2 is switching gears completely. The new opening theme is Call Me ASAP by Superdragon, and the new ending is Every Summer by Isle. Think about that shift for a second, going from a slow, reflective ballad energy into something with Call Me ASAP as the title. That's not subtle. That's the show telling you, directly, that the back half is about to pick up the pace. Somebody's about to stop sipping and start sprinting. And that tracks, because think about where this story has to go. We are now deep into the search for the 12 apostles, which means the tasting battles are only going to get harder, the wines more obscure, the family drama more tangled, and remember, this isn't just Shizuku versus Issei anymore. There's an entire cast of side characters circling this inheritance like sharks smelling blood in the water. There's a lawyer overseeing the whole dispute. There's a wine bar owner who's basically Shizuka's mentor and unofficial life coach. There's even a guy living in a cardboard house in the park who apparently survives purely on wine knowledge and vibes genuinely, one of the more chaotic side character concepts I've seen this season. And I say that with love. Cour 2 is where all these threads start pulling tight. Here's the analogy that I think actually nails what makes this show tick. Think of it like a cooking competition show, except instead of judges going, this needs more salt, they're unlocking full cinematic flashbacks from one bite. That's the wine tasting sequences in a nutshell. It turns a fundamentally internal, invisible experience taste into something visually loud and emotionally massive. That's a genuinely hard trick to pull off in animation, and when it lands hard. It's basically if Ratatouille's Rat Vision food montage was stretched into a full TV series and given a tragic backstory. Now let's talk about why this actually matters beyond just, hey, new episodes are coming. Anime as a medium has spent the last few years proving it can adapt literally anything into a compelling format. Go, chess, shogi, penmanship, you name it, someone's made a sports anime version of it. Wine tasting turning into a genuine hit is proof that audiences don't need superpowers or magic swords to get invested. They need stakes, rivalry, and a story that respects its niche enough to actually teach you something while it entertains you. You watch this show, and you will legitimately walk away knowing more about wine regions, vintages, and tasting notes than 90% of people at a dinner party. That's a flex. Free education disguised as drama, and honestly, that's the best kind. So where does that leave us heading into Cour 2? Higher stakes. New music energy that's clearly ramping up the tempo. A cast of characters whose personal lives are about to collide even harder with the inheritance battle. And a visual style that's still figuring out whether it wants to be a painting or a photograph, but doing it with confidence either way. Whether you're all in on the CGI wine pours or side-eyeing them a little, there's no denying the Drops of God carved out a lane nobody else was even trying to drive in, and Cour 2 looks like it's about to floor it. That is the tea, or, well, the wine on the Drops of God Cour 2. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.